Max, what is up, my friend? And
How's it going?
man, it's a beautiful Florida March day, and an even better day now that I get to spend some time with you and dive deep into Pickleheads.
I love it. The weather hasn't quite turned here in Atlanta yet, but we're getting there. I'm getting excited for the high season to get back outside and finally be able to play under the sun.
Yeah, no more indoor pickleball for you, so
That's right.
that'll be good. Well, as we dive into it, we'll excited to talk more about Pickleheads, but give us a quick 1 minute overview of who you are and ultimately what led you to starting Pickleheads in the first place.
Yeah, I'm a multiple time tech founder, basically spent my entire career at early stage startups. I was the first employee at a couple startups. I built a marketplace called Growth Collective, which I sold in 2021. The reason I ended up building Pickleheads was because during my last startup, 2.5 years in, I just hit a brick wall. I realized that I had created a job for myself, which I hated. I was doing basically B2B sales and operations and billing. And I'm like, this is not why I started a company. You start companies to work on things that you're passionate about. And I think what I realized is I had fallen into a trap that I think many founders do, which is that as you get older, you pursue less risky ideas. You pursue things that are quick to revenue, maybe have some flavor of an industry you've worked in and you feel like you've got some insider knowledge. But you stop taking those big bets that you would have taken if you were 22, like a fun consumer social app. And so I kind of made a deal with myself that this time around, I was going to swing for the fences and go for something that I was really excited to work on. And at the time, I was playing a lot of pickleball, and the trends were pretty unbelievable with pickleball, the growth trends. I remember looking at a Google Trends graph and just seeing this hockey stick, like exponential, and nobody was servicing that. There was very few websites that had a modern look and feel to them. And so my co-founder Brandon and I started talking about like, what could we build in this space that would be really interesting for players?
Yeah. So give us a rundown then on what Pickleheads is, and then we'll come full circle back to the pickleball market, which you started getting into a little bit there.
Yeah. So flash forward a few years now. Pickleheads is the leading website and mobile app for rec players. There's a lot of people in the pickleball industry focused on the pro game, focused on super competitive tournaments and leagues. We've always kind of started from the bottom up, helping people find a court. First of all, like if you want to play, you got to know where you can go play, and then connecting people with nearby players and open play sessions, giving them tools to organize groups and collect signups to play. And then more recently, we have this really awesome round robin tool that basically allows you to take a large group of players that are at varying different skill levels, put them on the same court, and everyone still gets fun, competitive games. So we have this kind of dynamic round robin tool that can make the magic happen out there on the court.
Super cool. And give us a rundown too on essentially your website, right? I'm sure people have searched into how many pickleball players or what's data, and Pickleheads is often one of the first results you come across. I'm sure now, even with AI and like these large language models, I'm sure you're still near the top on any of those queries. But building that first, what is the thought process to then now leaning more into a product?
Yeah, it's interesting. Most people, when they think about building a tech startup, they start with the old Paul Graham saying of do things that don't scale, right? They start with a very small product. They try it with a handful of people. They iterate on it. They find product market fit, the magical, elusive product market fit. And then maybe by the time they raise their Series A, they're really thinking about growth. And they're thinking about like, well, how do I cost effectively scale this thing up? And a lot of people run into a wall there because for their particular product, there might not be a way to scale it without spending, $1.20 to acquire $1 in revenue. And so we thought about, we saw this unique opportunity. I mentioned that exponential curve in traffic for pickleball, but we saw this unique opportunity in the moment, go out and win organic search traffic. And we made a very intentional decision to invert the normal process of building a company. Let's start by building customer acquisition first. Let's lock down organic search traffic from day one, and then let's layer on products from there. We always had a vision of helping players find games. We always felt like, who wouldn't want to play pickleball every day if they could? And then what are the limiting factors there? Well, you need a court to play on and you need people to play with at your skill level. So we've always been building towards that pain point, but the way that we got here was, I think, a little bit unusual, is that we started with the SEO and then we layered on products from there, and it's worked really well so far.
Yeah, and you view that as like creating your own distribution, essentially, like a creator, an athlete, right? They have this huge following. Is the thinking similar of like, hey, let's create that ourselves first, and then once you have them, now let's serve them with this. I don't want to say an upsell, but in essence, a little bit more of like, hey, we got them here. Now let's push them to the next thing.
Exactly. And you're seeing more and more of this. Like if you look at Athletic Greens and what they've done with influencer marketing, there's a lot of talent marketplaces now. They're doing outsourced VA talent. Almost every one of them has a celebrity or influencer as their like key endorsement and slash growth channel. But I've seen this done across almost every marketing channel. I was actually, back in the day, we did this with paid ads at a company that I was working for. And so you can do this with every marketing channel where you focus on, for this industry, where, what is the customer acquisition channel that works? And it's going to be different for a pickleball website than it is for, Athletic Greens. But there usually is something that you can do before building your product that gives you the audience, and it pays huge dividends later, because when you get to more a mature state in a startup, your biggest line item other than talent is going to be paid ads, or it's going to be some form of sales, right? Some form of acquisition.
Yeah. And then as you continue to progress through pickleball, obviously now you went from seeing the Google Trends to like you're actually servicing a lot of the people now influxed and, searching whatever they're searching. Any particular then numbers or things that started to stand out to you? I know you've made a bunch of infographics about this, but of like where pickleball is, I guess, sort of getting into now the market, like the actual sizing, once you started to dive in, like, hey, people are interested, but like, here's the raw data that we found.
Yeah. What's both exciting but also can be frustrating at times about pickleball is there's not enough data out there on it, and to be frank. And we have good data internally about the growth in facilities, and there's a couple organizations out there, the APP and the SFIA, which have attempted to estimate participation in the US, but their estimates are wildly different. So one has like 45 million and one has like, I don't know, I think the latest is like 15 million, somewhere in there, right? And so it's difficult to estimate. And I think it depends on how you define participation and how frequently people use it and that sort of thing. But what we can see without a doubt are the trends. And if you go and look at Google Trends for pickleball near me over the last 5 years, it's not slowing down. It just continues to grow. And what's even more exciting is that it's starting to grow internationally too, because this is a great product. Like pickleball, we like to say, is just in and of itself a great product. It's social, it's fun, it's sticky, it's easy to learn. It's essentially a way to hang out with other people in real life and to meet other people in real life. And that's what everybody wants ultimately. There's not a lot of that right now in our culture. And so this is like really bucking those trends. And so it's going to export really well internationally too. We're very confident in that. Some people compare pickleball and padel. For example, I think that what's missing in that comparison is that padel is a sport. Tennis is growing. Padel is growing. They're both going to do very well. Pickleball is not just a sport. This is like a social activity. If you are a single person, you can pick up your paddle, go to an open play session where you know nobody, and put your paddle in the rack and start playing and start talking to people. That is super unique to pickleball. And that's why you're seeing this kind of growth. And why you're going to see the same kind of growth internationally as well.
Yeah, I've never really heard it framed as it's a sport, but not really completely to some degree on the social component. But yeah, I mean, it's totally true. The barrier to entry is super low, which makes it, I like to say, like sometimes the non-athletic people come in and like the NARPs or whatever people call like, and so it's like the first thing that they can actually be good at that's like a sport or social activity, which is pretty funny and cool. But the only thing that annoys me about pickleball people is they always come onto the tennis court. So I don't know how you solve that, or how
It's
Pickleheads?
tough. I know it's tough. Yeah, look, there's, I think that's going to go away with time. I think that there just needs to be more infrastructure built overall. There's already tennis is growing. Like, the pandemic, it ignited pickleball, but it also ignited tennis and the growth of tennis. So there's just not enough court space, but there are just an absurd amount of courts being put in. I mean, we're going to go from undersupply to oversupply really quickly in terms of infrastructure. And it's not just happening with private clubs. There are 4 different franchises that are putting in hundreds of private clubs, but it's also happening in golf courses. It's happening in public parks. It's in HOAs. And so I think over time, you're going to see a lot less tension between tennis and pickleball and padel, tennis and pickleball. You're going to see more all racket sport centers, and people are going to play multiple of these sports.
Yeah. Any countries or even states that you see with a ton of growth or just large concentrations?
Southeast Asia is absolutely on fire right now. Places like Malaysia, Indonesia. So I think you're going to continue to see really strong Vietnam. You're going to see really strong growth in Southeast Asia. There's a big badminton culture in all of Asia, and the court sizes are pretty close. So there's an opportunity there, I think, similar to how tennis in the US was able to provide some infrastructure for early pickleball. I think that can happen in Asia with badminton courts. And also there's a love for table tennis over there as well. And table tennis skills translate very well to pickleball. I don't know if you've ever played against a ping pong player, but the weird angles that they have, it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, they get up to the kitchen and it's you got to try to drop them or lob them or something.
There's actually a really good clip online of Ben Johns, who's the #1 pickleball player in the world, playing ping pong against a top, I don't know, she was like some, world champion ping pong player, right? And they're ripping the ball at each other. And you realize like, oh, he was a ping pong player. Fascinating. I never would have thought that.
Yeah, it's a better transition probably from table tennis ping pong to pickleball than, we're seeing some of these, I don't want to say washed up, but some washed up tennis players coming in to try to go pro pickleball, but it's like actually you should be pulling from the table tennis side, which is interesting.
Yeah, Brandon and I were in Dubai for a pickleball conference, and pickleball is obviously just getting started there. There's only 2 clubs open so far, and the people that are playing, the first people to get out there, they're all ex-tennis players, and they were just ripping the ball at us. And we think we're pretty good players, we're like 4.5s, and they were just eating us up with that pure college and pro tennis game. So it does still translate. Tennis does still translate, but ping pong is also it's a dark horse. People don't think about it, but that skill really translates as well.
Yeah, no, it does. It's cool. Now, as you guys started to go from building your media side into the product side, then how did you navigate obviously raising capital to go extend the vision, and then also, building your team out larger to turn this into something big?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's 2, I mentioned earlier, the challenge that a lot of startups hit around seed or Series A, where they're trying to figure out how to grow sustainably and scalably. And, I think there's 2 points in a startup's journey that matter more than anything. And it's that, and then there's the finding product market fit. And so no matter what, you got to figure those 2 things out. You got to have a product that people love, and you've got to have an acquisition channel that scales, but is also costs less than the revenue you're going to make, right? And so we did them out of order, but I think we still checked off one of the 2 hardest things to do, which is that we did successfully unlock an evergreen channel of customer acquisition that we don't have to pay for. I mean, we get a million monthly uniques to our website every month in the summer completely for free, right? That'd be like having a fire hose of $200,000 in ads pointed at our website. So that was enough to ignite some initial investor interest. And then from there, we've been kind of validating and really getting into the nuances of what players want and what players need. There are some really interesting things about pickleball that are different than tennis or padel or any of the other racket sports. They're definitely different than soccer and golf and other sports like that. And so it's been a journey over the last few years to build products that are specific to pickleball and that cater to the pain points of the moment. When we first started, the biggest pain point by far was places to play. because most courts at that point were temporary courts. They were like chalked lines on a basketball court somewhere, or temporary tape you would put down in a gym. And so for that reason, it was hard to find. You couldn't just go on Google Maps and search for a pickleball court to find a place to play. And so that was a big pain point. And we solved that with our court finder. A year later, one of the big pain points was the information around when you play and just what times are people at locations for open play, because open play was the most common format of play. It still is. And so we actually went out and we aggregated all of the open play times. We would go on like a Facebook group or a government website and like find the times. And we mapped all that and we updated all the time. And so we keep it all fresh. The pain point of today is all around skill level. And so if you think about pickleball really starting to take off a little bit before the pandemic, but really got going during the pandemic, we've had 4 or 5 years since then. And in each of those years, we had millions of people start playing for the first time. So if you go back to 2022 or 2023, majority of the players that were first starting to play, majority of players were new players. They were beginners or they were intermediates. And those cohorts have now aged and leveled up. A lot of these people play 5 days a week. It's crazy how much people play. And so if you're playing 5 days a week for 2-3 years, you're not going to want to go to an open play and have to mix in with beginner players. So what we now have is we have a more distributed breakdown of skill level across the sport. Obviously, this makes sense, right? Every other sport that is a little bit further on their journey, like tennis, almost all of the games happen in like level-based settings. So you play in tennis leagues if you want to play, and you get matched up with people at your skill level. Well, pickleball is in this interesting moment in time where you want to preserve the magic of open play. Because open play, like I said earlier, that's where you can take your paddle and you show up by yourself and you meet people and it's fun and friendly and you're mixing and matching. But at the same time, people now care about the skill level. And so you need to add a little more structure. You need to, for example, organize by skill level, have certain times where certain skill levels come. When you get out on the court, if you're going to have a range of skill levels, you need to add in some structure, maybe run a round robin and put the best people match up against each other and, et cetera. And so that's what we're doing now. We have some really awesome round robin tools that help you manage that, both from an invite standpoint and then once you're out on the court. And then we're layering on, like I said before, we're kind of building from the ground up, from the most casual settings all the way up. But we're building up towards casual social leagues that are a fit for pickleball, tournaments, again, that are built for pickleball, where you get 5-6 games in before you even start a bracket, right? So these are the things that we're thinking about, and we think that this is where the sport's heading, and it's probably what will ultimately continue its growth, is by catering to these different skill levels.
Now, I know you're right in the mix of it. Now, do you start to think, let's go and using own in quotes, but let's own all of pickleball? Or do you start to go, hey, are there other sports or things we can replicate this with? Or what do you look for internally at Pickleheads? Obviously, your name's very pickleball focused, but how do you think about that as you continue scaling?
Yeah, we've always been pretty adamant about staying focused on pickleball. I think it was certainly a non-consensus bet early on. I think the further we go, I think the more people understand like this market's actually quite large. Obviously, I'm not going to make predictions 5-10 years from now. Certainly, there might be opportunities for us to have a holding company of brands that operate in different sports. But there's so much that you can be gained by focus. Number one, just from the player standpoint, becoming an app for them, a brand specific to pickleball, I think really speaks to players more than a multi-sport app. I think that's a huge advantage in terms of getting players into our network. But even when you start to think about the product itself, I used to play tennis as well. And when you are devising a tennis league, you would build it in a completely different way from pickleball. A lot of the companies that are failing in pickleball right now, and I won't name any names, but a lot of them that are failing in pickleball right now are people who took what worked in tennis and tried to paste it into pickleball. And the reason is there are just some really specific nuances that you can't really get the feel for until you start really immersing yourselves in the pickleball culture. But we found that everything from inviting players to play to the formats of a round robin or a league or a tournament, they're all different for pickleball. And so we find that there's some advantages to staying one sport.
Interesting. From when you start to look at maybe others that have dominated a sport, I'm staying more on like the sports tech side. Are there any companies or, groups that you've, I don't want to say admired, but like to some degree you go, hey, I love what they've built in X and we can do something similar in sports, or anyone you're taking ideas or learning from, or how are you approaching that?
Yeah, one of the ones that comes to mind is Strava. We use this example a lot when we were raising money, but it's incredible how Strava, in a space where there's a lot of competition, I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can track your runs, right? And that's only increased over time. But they've really built a strong moat, and they've got very strong network effects. And every runner or cyclist I know is on Strava. And when you start to dive into that and say, like, why did they pull away? And I know it took a lot of time, but why did they pull away from some of these other competitors? And I would point to the fact that they have multiplayer functionality. If you talk to my wife, she's in a run club. And what's funny is she'll be on her phone and she'll be like commenting on her friends' runs. It's crazy. I would never have thought that this was a thing.
Nuts.
It reminds me almost of when LinkedIn launched their feed. I just remember being like, who is going to use this? Like LinkedIn doesn't need a feed. And I think it's amazing what Strava's been able to do there. And so by being multiplayer to where you have to be on Strava because you're part of this community of runners or cyclists, that's very similar to what we're doing with Pickleheads. We're trying to be the operating system for rec play. And that means that if you're a group, you want to be on Pickleheads. And if you're a player, you want to be on Pickleheads to be a part of those communities. So I admire them. I also, a lot of admiration for golf now, what they've been able to do in terms of unlocking supply across the country and making it really easy for people to book tee times. I think there's an opportunity for us to do the same with games and being able to not just book a court, but to book a spot in a game at your skill level anywhere in the country. And that is something that we're really interested in unlocking for everybody.
Yeah, super cool. As you look, now we're already in March, so we're nearing the end of Q1 already, but as you're looking forward to the rest of 25 and want to say even the next couple of years, any macro trends, right? You noticed a trend in pickleball participation, anything now as you're starting to look forward ahead of like, hey, I think these might be the next things, whether in sports in general or pickleball in the space you're building in?
Yeah, it's interesting. There was we had an investor that we were talking with, and they had a theory on the miniaturization of sport. And I thought this was like really fascinating. At first, I was kind of like, what? And then the more I thought about it, I think it's spot on. So you think about pickleball as being a lot more accessible version of many of these other racket sports, and it can be played everywhere. It's easy to pick up, etc. You think about going Top Golf or a golf simulator or the new golf league. What is it, like TGL? Miniaturized version of the PGA Tour. And the more you look around the sports industry, you see a lot of examples like this. 3-on-3 basketball. I mean, that's a weird example, right? But like that is kind of how it is. So I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at sports as a whole. In terms of pickleball itself, I think the big trend that you're going to see over the next 5 years is the inversion of court shortage to court oversupply. And I think that's going to have implications for everything. So for example, one of the reasons why open play was so popular was because, and still is because you're sharing court space. It's a mechanism to share a finite amount of court space. But in a world where you have ample court space, how does that look? Are people playing in private games, just 4 people booking a court, almost like tennis is played? Or are people continuing to play in large groups and they're splitting it up by skill level? Does the facility need to get more involved in how that programming's structured? Will it be community organized? There's a lot of questions to be answered about how the average game of pickleball is going to be organized in that environment. And then I think what you're going to see from facilities is that they've been able to make a lot of money just by existing, quite frankly. They haven't had to do hardly any marketing. People will walk in the door and become members because there's court space. And so there's going to be a lot higher bar, I think, for them to acquire and retain members in this world where the public park down the street puts in 20 dedicated courts and everyone's HOAs also have them and the golf course you're a part of has them, etc.
Yeah, that's a good point. It sort of happened to basketball. I saw it happen to tennis to some degree. Yeah, no, Max, this has been great. I don't think anything else. I think we got to everything. So give us the rundown if people want to learn more about Pickleheads. Check it out. Find a court. Whether it's more the obviously you're not corporate yet, but more the corporate side or the consumer side. Where can people learn more about Pickleheads?
Yeah, check it out. Search for Pickleball in either app store. You'll see us right there at the top. You can also obviously visit pickleheads.com. And if you're interested in trying some of the round robin tools that I mentioned out, they're a really fun way of organizing play, even with just your friends. So pickleheads.com/round-robin is another link I would check out. And yeah, see you out on the court.
Let's do it.